I'm Lenny Lefitz. I was born on September 29th, 1929, just 1 month before the crash. And I was born in Omaha, and I was raised in Omaha, and I was educated in Omaha at the University of Omaha. And I loved Omaha. I think it's a wonderful place to have been born. I enjoyed the city very much and the people that I met and that I knew. My parents were from Europe. My mother was from Poland, Warsaw, Poland. She came here when she was 5 years old with her family and moved to New York City and stayed there for a number of years until she was about 8 or 9, and then she came to Omaha to stay with her sister Jenny. Jenny became, I don't remember her last name, but she stayed with her sister Jenny. And my father, who came from Russia, Minsk Gubernia, he came in 1918, and he went to New York for a while, but did not like New York at all. And a brother of his who was living in Omaha, his name was Nathan, he suggested that he come out to Omaha and find a life for himself in Omaha. So my father did come, and he became a boarder at Jenny's home. So my father and my mother met each other in Omaha at Jenny's home. And they married, eventually having 7 children.
Lenny, what was your mother's maiden name?
My mother's maiden name was Rachel Leah Becker. And she had 2 sisters. Jenny was one of them, and Fanny was the other one. I've visited them both. In fact, I stayed in Jenny's home in New York when I was going to get my master's at Columbia University. And Fanny came out and stayed with us for a while when we were living in an apartment. She came out one summer, and it was just so hot when she was here. I remember there was no air conditioning in our apartment, and we had to keep the windows open and the doors open so that we could all have some relief from the weather. My father, I started to tell you this, that my grandfather had lost his wife, and he remarried, and in that second family of my mother's, there were 4 boys and 1 girl. They were all named Becker. They lived in New York and stayed in New York. They did not leave the city. These 4 boys I visited on 2 or 3 occasions while I lived in New York. They lived in Seagate, which is a part of Coney Island. It's a gated community in Coney Island. And one of the brothers got me a job eventually at the Catskills Resort, and I worked as a waiter there eventually. Before I came to California, I worked as a waiter there. I started out as a busboy. That's the job he got me. But I was a very efficient busboy, and they moved me up to being a waiter. So I worked there one summer. I made enough at that time to come out here and buy a car. So I'm off the track. So anyhow, this Becker, brother of my mother, got me the job there. And they were um, a very close family, close-knit family. In Omaha, we lived at 2620 Blondo Street for many years. The neighborhood changed rather completely before we moved out. It was a Jewish neighborhood when we moved in, and it was a black neighborhood when we moved out. We moved to Myrtle Street, right near the 30th Street, I guess you'd call it a highway or a major street on Myrtle. Made friends with a lot of people. The Milton, forget his last name, and Eunice Denneberg. She lived right behind us, and I can't remember Milton's name, last name. We were I was very close to Milton, and we stayed there. We rented that home. It was a much bigger home than we had on Blondo Street, and then we moved to another rental home on 35th and Leavenworth, and we lived there for about 3 years, and then my father and mother decided to buy a home, and we bought a home on 37th and Davenport. And that was the home that I lived in most of my life in Omaha. And when I left Omaha, after I had graduated from college, I was living in that particular home.
I'd like to hear the names of your siblings.
All right, I'll tell you the names of all my siblings. The oldest was Mildred. She became Mildred Posley. She married Leonard Posley. She had one child. The next one in age was Ben. He married Tibby. They had one child, Larry Lefitz. The next one was Maury. He married Louise Cohn from Omaha, although he met her here in Los Angeles. And they had 2 children. And then there was Sylvia. She remained unmarried until she was 40. And then she met Jules, who had lost his wife. Ellen, I don't remember her name, Ellen Shapiro, and he married Sylvia. He had 2 children, and Sylvia was the stepmother of those 2 children. Sylvia never had children on her own. Then there was Arthur. No, there was Bess. She calls herself Beth now instead of Bess. She married Floyd Perlmeter, who was an Omahan, and they were related to the Richards family. And she had 2 children, Peggy and Stuart. Our wing of the family out here in Los Angeles is very, very close to them, the children of my sister Bess. We talk frequently. She called me last night, in fact. And then there was Arthur. He married Nina, and Nina was from Phoenix, Arizona, and she lived here in Los Angeles, and Arthur married her and had 2 children. And then there was me, and I married and had 3 children and 6 grandchildren. Do you want the names of the children of these siblings? You want the names? Mildred's one child was named David. David Posley. He married Joni Jacobs, who was a resident of California. He went to UCLA out here. And Ben's child was Larry. Larry became very successful with a pizza company called Domino's. But, no, not Domino's. Domino's is out here. But he didn't stay with it, and he left, and I think he's in real estate now. I'm not too much in touch with him. Maury had 2 children. He became an entrepreneur of a very large electrical supply company in Culver City. And he has 2 children, one Stephanie and the other David. And they both live in one moved to Portland, Oregon. And Bess is in Denver. She has Peggy and Stuart, and they're both married. And she has 4 grandchildren. And of the 7 of us, she and I are the only 2 who are left. Arthur was a lawyer and an engineer. He went to the University of Omaha, then he went to the University of Iowa, then he went to Creighton University, and he became a lawyer and an engineer. I'm very proud of the fact that he did that. That's quite an accomplishment. And then I was very inspired by a teacher at Central High School. I became an English teacher. I taught at Grant High School for 5 years. And then I moved over to Valley College in Los Angeles, also in Van Nuys, California. And I was there for 37 years. I was a professor of English. I taught writing and literature and English as a second language. I retired in 1999 at the age of 69. I'm proud that I stayed there after I was of retirement age, 4 years before that. And
Lenny, what kind of work did your father do?
my father had a stand at the Omaha City Market. At that time, that market was really the hub of the downtown area because people from all over Omaha knew about it. And there were about, I would say, 25 vendors there, plus a back platform that attracted farmers to sell their own produce. My father actually dealt with large quantities of fruit, not too many vegetables, but a lot of fruit. And he would sell bushels and boxes of peaches and pears and apricots and cherries throughout the summer. He started around May and he ended around September because the weather became inclement and he couldn't stay there in the winter. We put up a canvas in the back of the stall that he had to keep the wind from blowing against our bodies, so it was actually fairly warm. Right next to us on one side was Alfio, and he was a wonderful, wonderful man. We were very pleased to have him next to us. He was a very large Italian man. Across from us was the Green family, also Jewish, and Donald Green, their son, worked with them, as I did with my father, and Donald became a doctor eventually. I started working there before I could even get a permit to work. I was down there as a tag-along with my brothers and my father and my mother. And then other siblings of mine stayed home and took care of the house in the summer when they were out of school.
You mentioned these two other people that were nearby you.
Yes.
What kind of products were they selling?
Well, Alfio sold fruit primarily, with some vegetables, and the Greens across from us sold primarily vegetables and smaller quantities of bushels and baskets of fruit. My father was a very good buyer of fruit, and he bought a lot of his things that he sold from Elmer Greenberg, who had the largest wholesale distributorship in that area. My brother Ben worked for two of the wholesale men. Can't remember their names. I have it written on that thing that I wrote down, but I just can't remember it now.
What kind of work did you do down at the market yourself?
Oh, I was a person who sold. I was a very good salesperson. And I also kept the place in order and stocked the, I guess you would call them benches that we put our food on. They weren't really tables. Maybe they could be considered tables. And the fruit was placed on these counters. That's the word I'm looking for. They were placed on these counters, and many, many people came in, particularly when it rained. We were very busy when it rained because the farmers from the area could not work their fields when their fields were so wet, and they came in and bought large quantities of things for them to take home and preserve by cooking them and putting them in jars. Sometimes they probably would not cook them and put them in jars anyhow. No, I guess they did cook them. But I went to California after I graduated the University of Omaha. I went to New York first for a year, and then I went to California. And 1 year, while I was still teaching here, I became so nostalgic for the life that I had at the market that I told my father, who was still in the business when I was in California, he was still doing the same thing, that I would come to Omaha for the summer and help him out at the market. And I went back and worked 1 summer at the market, and then Paul Saltzman and we were very, very good friends for 8 years, all through high school and all through college. He and I drove out to California in this wonderful car, this wonderful convertible that we were driving for a firm who had to get a car out here. And we stopped along the way in Wyoming, and that's something I remember so vividly because the countryside was just beautiful. So he delivered the car out here in California, and that was a big adventure for me, very big adventure for me.
Who were some of your customers at your fruits and vegetables?
You mean names?
Were they lay people, or were they people that had businesses for the most part?
I don't know what you mean, lay people.
Were they
residents of Omaha?
Yes, but were they just buying for their own
They're
consumption?
buying for their own consumption. They were buying for their own consumption, and they came to the market primarily because it was less expensive, and there was a huge variety with all these stands there, and the produce was fresh. Things were right from the ground there. They had just been harvested, except for certain items. For instance, we had bushel baskets of Colorado peaches. They were the #1 product in the summer, and apples in the end of the summer. And these Colorado peaches, my father once bought 150 bushels of them from Elmer Greenberg, and Elmer stored them in his cooler as we used them, and they were very popular for the people who came there to buy large quantities of peaches to can. I guess you'd call them lay people who wanted to come down there and have the advantage that they would get from that market. We have a lot of them out here in California now. They're called farmers markets, and they're all over Los Angeles, and they're down here in Orange County as well. So it was the same concept, actually, except this market where I worked sold only fruits and vegetables. There weren't nuts or meat or anything else like that. It was just our bread. They sold bread at these, and honey and all this other stuff. They sold only fruits and vegetables at the Omaha City Market.
What did your father do during that part of the year when he wasn't?
When he wasn't at the market, he became a peddler. And what he did was to go into the countryside, both Iowa, around Council Bluffs, and Nebraska, west of us, and would deal with the farmers by actually bartering. He would get money for some of the things, but most of the time he would get chickens and eggs, and he'd take them to Swanson's packing plant, I don't know what it was, and he'd sell them to Swanson's for a profit. But because even though we were not wealthy at all, we were poor, he managed to always have some chickens and some eggs left over. And we had a chicken coop in the back of our home when we lived on Blondo, a large chicken coop, and we had about 20 chickens in there all the time. And we had boxes and boxes of eggs that we used throughout the winter. They were in the basement of our home.
Do you remember any of your neighbors from on Blondo Street?
There's only one neighbor I remember, and that's Dolgoff. The neighbor was Dolgoff. They were very good friends of my parents, and they would have card games every Saturday night. A whole group of them would do that. But as the neighborhood turned black, I was young at that time. I don't remember who the people were at all. I don't recall them. Bess was in a sorority. I became rather active in AZA later on when I was in high school. But otherwise, I really didn't remember very many of the people in the neighborhood. I do remember them from Davenport and 35th Street. I remember our neighbors well.
What are some of your memories of Central High School?
What a period in my life that was. That was just the best. It was wonderful. Aside from the time when I was married to Aviva and we had children, I remember that so fondly. It was the best days of my life. It was really wonderful. One of the reasons it was so good is that I was very studious. I became selected for the National Honor Society when I was a senior there. I was inspired by many, many teachers. I don't remember my biology teacher's name, but she was wonderful. I had a wonderful civics teacher as well. But my favorite teacher that I had was Augusta Turpin. She had a great influence on me at Central High because I took her for 3 semesters, primarily because of Audrey Greenberg. Audrey Greenberg was her secretary, and Audrey Greenberg was able to get me into her classes each semester because it was almost impossible to get into her class. We ran for teachers at that time. They were not assigned to us, we selected them. And Augusta Turpin was the hardest one to get into, and Audrey helped me out a lot. I took her for 3 semesters, and I remember things from that high school English more vividly than I remember my college teachers. I had one excellent college English teacher by the name of Dr. Wardle, and he's about the only one I remember from the University of Omaha. I was going to tell you something else about Central. I worked for the Register. I was the circulation manager with Audrey Greenberg. We were both the circulation manager. And I worked with Lee Gendler a lot. He was the editor of the paper. And I worked on the O-Book staff there, and I was in the drama department. I was in the choir. I was pretty active on that campus, doing a lot of different things. But I think the reason I liked that school so much, beside the high quality of teaching that went on there, was that they had a large Jewish population, and I knew almost every one of them. When I say large, I don't know how large it was, but it was maybe 3/5 of the school. I'm not sure, but a lot of them were Jewish, and I knew most of the people. And it was a very warm and friendly thing. That was one of the things I didn't find in my university. It's probably one of the reasons why Central was more meaningful to me than the University of Omaha. But it was really a wonderful time. And of course, after school, we walked over to the Jewish Community Center, and we spent many hours there. I played basketball there. I went swimming there. There was a youth lounge there. I was active in a particular organization that I can't remember the name of right now. It was the organization that was the umbrella over the various clubs that were there. I was the vice president of that organization. What was that organization? Don't remember it.
How about your elementary school education? Where did you go, Lenny?
Okay, I went to Long School for the first 3 years of my education. That was a little school in our neighborhood. When I was there, it was becoming black, and I didn't have many friends there, except for Stanley Cooper. I don't know whether he's still in Omaha or not, or whether he's still around. But Stanley Cooper and I were very close friends at Long's. I remember one time the principal came to visit the class, and we had to put on a little bit of a demonstration of what we had learned. And I had to spell for him the word ocean, and I remember I could not spell it. I must have been in second grade, and when I stopped to think that in second grade they're teaching the word ocean, I don't think they would do that in spelling ocean. I don't think they would do that in California. That's not California style. I remember that very well. It was Long's was only about 8 blocks from my home. And we walked there and walked back. After we moved to Myrtle Avenue, I went to can't remember it, but I was a student there at a very good school, very nice school, about 12 blocks. The thing that I remember about that school so much was their music program. They had a wonderful music teacher there, and I learned a lot of songs that are standard songs in the United States, like Oh Susanna kind of things. I learned all those songs, and I don't think we did the Battle Hymn of the Republic, but it was like that. Also, I enjoyed one thing very much in the autumn when I went to that school. I was there only for 2 years, because we lived in Myrtle for only 2 years. It was on a hill from our home, and we would walk home, and we would walk in the autumn in the on the side of the street where all the leaves were gathered, and we would move our feet in such a way that we would kick up the leaves as they were in front of us. We were in a mound of leaves all the time. There was a whole display of leaves before us, and we just enjoyed that so much. I remember that very well. I was on a safety patrol there. That was at Columbia. That was the next school I attended. That was when I was on 35th and Leavenworth. I was on a safety patrol, and that was during the war years, World War II, and we were knitting Afghans, is that the right word, Afghans? For the soldiers, I guess to keep them warm, and I remember that we did that. We also were bringing hard-boiled eggs to school, and what the hell that was for, I do not remember. I don't think they sent the hard-boiled eggs over to soldiers, I'm not sure. But we were bringing hard-boiled eggs to school. I didn't care that much for Columbia. I don't know exactly why. I got a job at Albert's Market. Albert's or Albert's? Albert's. On Leavenworth and about 33rd and Leavenworth. And I was their delivery boy, and I was their cleanup guy. I think I was in the first or second year of high school when I did that. And what was the question you asked me?
About schooling, your elementary school.
Elementary school. So Columbia was really the end of my education in elementary school. Then from there, I went directly to high school, because in those days, there was no junior high. And when you graduated 8th grade, which I did from Columbia, we went directly to high school. And we were in high school for 4 years.
Lenny, tell me about your mother.
Tell me about my mother. She was an angel. She was a wonderful, wonderful person. And how she worked so hard to raise 7 children, I don't know how she ever did it. One thing I remember her doing so well, 2 things I remember her doing so well. At Passover, she had to make the horseradish. Horseradish didn't come in a bottle at that time. Horseradish was a piece of horseradish, and she would grind it up in a little grinder that she had in the kitchen. So I remember that very well. Gefilte fish, when we had it, she chopped the fish in a wooden bowl with a chopper. And the wooden bowl had marks on it from the years that she was using it. She used it for a long time. I do remember when she made the horseradish that she would sit there and cry. The horseradish was so strong. It was really strong horseradish. And at Passover, we could hardly eat it. It was so strong. But she was chopping that up. She was, and you know, the children took advantage of her because she was so devoted to her family that she let everybody sleep until they wanted to get up on Sunday morning. And she spent the entire Sunday morning making breakfast for each one of us as we came downstairs to, that was on Davenport Street, as we came downstairs from our night's sleep. So, and she was a good cook. She was a very good cook. A Yiddish cook, not Italian spaghetti. She'd make Eastern European foods all the time. And when we wanted to have the Italian spaghetti and chop suey, we went to my sister Mildred's home, who married very, very young. She married at 18. They eloped. She and Leonard eloped. And she was married. I think she was married when I was born. So she was already out of the house when I was born. And she was a great, great cook. And she made the spaghetti type of food, the more modern food. But my mother was a traditional Eastern Europe cook. And
what was it like sitting down to dinner with the entire family?
Well, on Blondo Street, the first time I remember, we had a big round table in the kitchen and an ice box in a little room behind the kitchen. I remember the guy, I remember his name, I don't know why I remember his name. His name was Nachum. He delivered ice in the area. And he was the husband of one of my father's sisters, Rose Kolick. And he delivered ice all the time, and we followed him around because we wanted to get chips of ice all the time so we could suck on them and have a treat. So we did that quite often. But I lost the train of thought. What was I telling you?
We're talking about your mother being...
My mother.
Yes.
Okay. She was a heavy woman, and she wasn't fat, but she was heavy. And she would do one thing each week that we liked very much on Sunday. We liked it on Sunday. That my dad had a truck at that time. He used it to go out into the farming area, and we would pile into the truck, and we would even have neighbors and everybody come with us into the back of a truck. It was a pretty big truck. And we would sing all the way to Elmwood Park. we would sing and joke and laugh and do all kinds of fun things on the way to Elmwood Park, where my parents, my mother and my father, enjoyed cards. They played a lot of cards, particularly poker. And gin rummy, I guess they played as well, but mostly poker. And they played poker at the park with their friends, while the kids ran all around Elmwood, particularly through the fountain area that's on the lower reaches of the park. And I've loved that park for so many years. It brings back wonderful memories to me, Elmwood Park. When we went home, we went down a street, I don't remember the name of it, that had a fountain where the lights changed colors. And we were all very fond of that fountain. It was a rather big fountain. In fact, when it got hot and there was no air conditioning, we would go to the park that the fountain was in and sleep on the grass with blankets underneath us. That became the night of sleeping while it was still summertime and very warm. But the thing I remember about my mother with that, going to Elmwood Park, is that she, in those days they had orange crates. They don't have them anymore. And on the end of the orange crate was always a label from where they came from, the western part of the United States. And she would take one of those crates, or maybe even sometimes two of them if there were enough people going to Elmwood Park, and she'd fill it up with things like fried chicken and potato salad, and she just cooked up a storm for that trip to Elmwood Park. And then after we ran around and they played cards, we'd have this large picnic, and sometimes people who were not in our family joined us, but all the kids in the family knew what time to get back for dinner. Well, it was an early dinner, actually. I think we ate at around 4 or 5 o'clock. Also, I remember at that time that we went to the sing-along on the hills of Elmwood Park. They had a big screen with the lyrics on it, and we would sit on the grass and sing songs with the leader of the sing-along. Sometimes we even walked home. At times we didn't take the truck. My parents took the truck, but sometimes the children walked home by themselves. I used to take a lot of walks down Dodge Street, up and down Dodge Street when we lived on Davenport. I used to love it, and I also liked the streetcar that ran on Farnham Street. I enjoyed taking that as well. And I remember very fondly, one time, I had this big, beautiful winter coat with a big fur collar. And in the winter, I got off the trolley on Farnham Street and walked the 4 blocks to my home, and it was snowing, and it was just glorious to me. I just thought it was beautiful. I also remember another scene. Sylvia had a friend who gave her tickets to the symphony at the Jocelyn Memorial, the Omaha Symphony Orchestra. I had never seen a symphony before, but she said she can't use her ticket. Would I use it? So I said yes. I took the bus down to Jocelyn, and I heard Tchaikovsky's 4th Symphony, and it moved me so much. And I remember so much walking home from Jocelyn up to 37th Street in the snow and thinking of that wonderful concert that I had heard at the Omaha Symphony Orchestra. But my mother was a very stable, very stable person. And I think she did a damn good job of raising our family. My father was a authoritarian. He was not the same kind of person as my mother. When we were misbehaving at home as young children, my mother would say, "Shah, your father is here." And all of a sudden we'd all get quiet. I remember that very vividly. We knew that when my father came home, we couldn't act up as we were acting up when my mother was there by herself. He was a real authoritarian.
Where did you go to a synagogue? Which synagogue?
I went to the Rosh Hashanah? Does that sound familiar? Rosh Hashanah? I don't remember. We went to that one, and my father, who was the yeshiva bacher in Russia, moved away from the religiosity of Judaism when he came here. He was not seriously agnostic, but he became more of a socialist. And he supported Azerbaijan in Russia. And we still kept a strong Jewish home. We kept a strong Jewish home, but it was not as traditional as many of our neighbors. We lived next door on Blondo Street to the Finkelsteins, and he was the shamus of that shul. And they were very religious. And we weren't in that direction at all. After we left the Rosh Hashanah shul, I became active at Bethel when it was still on 49th Street. And I was in the Bethel youth group. And I went to services there quite often. I think my father and my mother stayed at that Rosh Hashanah while I was growing up, and also when I was older. They stayed at that shul. But I went to Bethel. I never went to the Reforms Temple, but my sister Mildred and her husband Leonard were both teachers at the Reform Temple. At that time, it was near Leavenworth. It wasn't where it is now. When I was 30, I was still unmarried, and I was teaching, and I joined a group called the Templars at Temple, I said it to you earlier, Emmanuel, at Temple Emmanuel in Beverly Hills. And when I got there to my third meeting, I saw this lovely young girl, and I sat down and talked with her, and we talked and talked and talked, and I said, let's get out of here and have a cup of coffee. So we went to Westwood, and we had a cup of coffee at the Village Delicatessen. I remember that delicatessen very much. It was right next to the movie theaters in Westwood. I started calling her, and I called her for about 6 months, and we dated and dated a little bit, but then she had to go back to Europe because she had to get some reparations from Germany. She had come from the Holocaust. She lost her mother and her sister in Auschwitz, and she was on the Kindertransport list, where they sent her out of Germany when she was a young girl, and she wound up in Switzerland at an orphanage. throughout the war. And then she had a very prominent woman in Zurich take her to her home, to the woman's home, because it's like the story of Heidi in Switzerland. She had a daughter who had polio, and she wanted Aviva to be her companion. And they fell in love with Aviva. Her name at that time was Hannelore, a German name. She changed it to Aviva when she came to Israel. But she stayed with them for the last couple of years of the war. She hated that orphanage. She absolutely hated it. But she lived through it anyhow. And they wanted to adopt her after the war, and she said, no, I'm going to Israel. I have a Zionist feeling in me, and I want to live in Israel. So she joined Hashomer Hatzair, which is a very liberal, maybe socialist group that was strongly Zionistic. So she joined that group, and if anybody has ever read the book Exodus by Leon Uris, it's actually a picture of what happened to her when she came to Israel. She had to be smuggled in. She went to a kibbutz to live. She went to Jerusalem and lived in Jerusalem, became a nurse. Went to Haifa, lived in Haifa for a long time. She was a pediatric nurse, and she worked at a pediatric hospital. And then her cousin, this is something negative, I don't know whether you want me to say it. Her cousin who lived here, who did not offer to take her family out of Germany when they were pleading for her to do so, asked her to come to the United States to be with this relative's family. So she did. She said she will give it a try for a short time. And that's when I met her, when she was here in Los Angeles with her cousin. Her cousin was extremely wealthy from the movie business. And I think Aviva resented that for many years, that she didn't offer to take her family out of Germany. But she came anyhow, and that's when I met her. She had to go back to Germany to see her house was sold or something like that. I don't remember exactly what it was. And she got reparations from the German government for the loss of the house, and also for the loss of her education. And then she went to Israel, back to Israel, and she met a young man who later became a member of the Knesset, and his name was Joe, and they became entwined with each other, but they broke up because his mother was impossible, very difficult. So she came back to the United States and decided to live in Los Angeles, and I met her there. After dating her for a while, we decided that we would get serious with each other. I remember that we took a drive up to Malibu, and I told her that I was interested in getting married to her, and she said she was interested as well. So we got married. 1959, we were married. I was still teaching in high school at that time. I hadn't moved to the college yet. And before we moved to our home, we lived in West Hollywood on Sweetser and Fountain in an apartment. And at that particular location, we had our first baby, whose name is Andrea. Andrea is now 45 years old. She has 3 children, two of which are twins and one older boy. And Andrea has become super Jew. She's a Reformed Jew, but she's so deeply involved in Jewish life. It's wonderful. Right now she's in Prague, in Europe, Prague, Czechoslovakia, for a conference on Eastern Europe Jews. Then we moved to Northridge and had our second child. That's Mark. Mark lives in Westlake Village, California, and he's a computer graphics artist. He worked for Disney for many years, and now he's going on his own. He's going to set up his own business, doing the same thing. And Ricky, also born in Northridge, became eventually a literary agent. He handles writers and directors of TV shows. It's a strange thing that happened that Andrea and Kenny have 3 boys, 2 of which are twins, and Mark, my son, has 3 girls, 2 of which are twins. So we must have had twins in our family way back. I don't know where. Although Kenny, Andrea's husband, his mother is a twin. So I don't know what happened there. I'm not sure. Andrea is married to Kenny. They've been married for, I think, 15 years. I'm not sure. 15 years. No, Daniel's 16. It has to be more than 15 years. Maybe 17 years or 18 years. Kenny is a wonderful guy. He's a terrific person. He's cool and he's warm and friendly, and he's a real Hamish guy. And Mark's wife is lovely too. She is actually a sociologist, and she started some business that was a wonderful altruistic business a long time ago. What it did was to help children who had lost a parent through counseling, help them through counseling, sort of a grieving group of people. And the children, I'm sure, were helped a great deal. She's a good mother, a very good mother, and she is a housewife. She has not been to work since they were married. And she does a good job of raising the kids. In closing this interview, I would like to say that I have some wonderful children. They all turned out to be very stable and giving people. My daughter Andrea, her husband Kenny, my son Mark, his wife Hillary, and Ricky. Andrea has her 3 children, Daniel, Ari, and Adam. And Mark has his 3 daughters, Lauren, Sophie, and Sarah. Ricky doesn't have any children yet, but I'm sure he will. And I do want to say this, if I can, that they've been great support to me. Great, wonderful support. And I appreciate all of them very much. And I love them very much. Each one of them is a wonderful person. And I'm so happy that I have this family. God blessed me. He was smiling on me when I married Aviva, and we together had this family. And I love them all. Andrea is married to Kenny. They've been married for, I think, 15 years. I'm not sure. 15 years. No, Daniel's 16. It has to be more than 15 years. Maybe 17 years or 18 years. Kenny is a wonderful guy. He's a terrific person. He's cool, and he's warm and friendly, and he's a real Hamish guy. And Mark's wife is lovely too. She is actually a sociologist, and she started some business that was a wonderful altruistic business a long time ago. What it did was to help children who had lost a parent through counseling, help them through counseling, sort of a grieving group of people. And the children, I'm sure, were helped a great deal. She's a good mother, a very good mother, and she is a housewife. She has not been to work since they were married. And she does a good job of raising the kids. In closing this interview, I would like to say that I have some wonderful children. They all turned out to be very stable and giving people. My daughter Andrea, her husband Kenny, my son Mark, his wife Hillary, and Ricky. Andrea has her 3 children, Daniel, Ari, and Adam. And Mark has his 3 daughters, Lauren, Sophie, and Sarah. Ricky doesn't have any children yet, but I'm sure he will. And I do want to say this, if I can, that they've been great support to me. Great, wonderful support. And I appreciate all of them very much. And I love them very much. Each one of them is a wonderful person. And I'm so happy that I have this family. God blessed me. He was smiling on me when I married Aviva, and we together had this family. And I love them all.